I'm Tess Hartman-Cullen. I'm an assistant librarian at SUNY Ulster, and my official title is the coordinator of information literacy. So when we were here, I was here with a colleague, Marla Gruner, who is still at SUNY Ulster. But part of what I'm going to talk about today is there's not as many of us as there used to be, so only one of us could come and do the update today. So when we came, I think it was 2018. We were talking about library infiltration on campus, and we touched a lot of different things that we do to sort of do outreach, information literacy teaching, all kinds of good stuff. And today, what I wanted to do for the update was sort of do a deep dive into our partner librarian program, which we had just sort of begun, when we presented last time. So this was the slide that we presented back then. And really, our partner librarian program, in a way, was just kind of like a branding, honestly, with one little tweak, because we were doing appointment booking, we were going into classes, we were partnering with a lot of specific faculty, but we rebranded it, talking about partner librarians. And the one adjustment that we made is we took all of our English 101 and English 102 students, so those are required classes at SUNY Ulster, and we divided them up by the alphabet. We got the rosters, and we assigned each librarian, like I got A through F, and Marla got like G through N, so on and so forth. So at the time, what we did is we did a little mail merge. We created everyone's personalized letter. We went into all of the classes and we handed them out personally, right? So this was a lot of work. We did sort of a basic presentation, saying this is our library services. We already had really strong relationships with our English faculty. So a few of them even went further and gave extra credit on papers if students would come and book an appointment with us. So the other thing we did is we were downloading rosters, making sure we were tracking like who we met with, all of that good stuff. And it was really successful. So you can see, at the time we had a big uptick in our reference interactions from 44% to 58%. There was a slight uptick in the virtual, and then 13%. This was halfway through the semester. So 13% of them were partner librarians. So that was the other thing is, we track all of our reference questions, and we added that sort of like, is this partner librarian generated? So fast forward to now, at the time we had English partnerships, human resources, and history. So we still have English and history, and I'll do a little bit, talk a little bit more specifically about the history partnership. Human services went away. Now we have some psychology stuff. So, it's still pretty steady. So our reference questions are down from what we were then. Now, partly we were 1,800 FTE then, now we're 1,500 FTE. So, enrollment is down. There's one less of us, right? We had a part-time position that went away. So we don't sit out at the desk anymore either. So that's another change that we've done. We were just finding that we were sitting out there a lot of the time, and it was like, we couldn't get a lot of our work done, out there, and there weren't that many people coming. So, and with the partner librarian program, we felt like they knew how to seek us out. The way, like physically in our space, there's a reference desk, and our offices are just right there. So a lot of students just kind of come in, and we've been experimenting with that. We'll talk more about it. I have mixed feelings, but 39% of our reference interactions are partner librarian generated. So they're really kind of our bread and butter. We really put a lot of investment in this program. So COVID, changed everything. We were doing all of this in-person, like high touch, face-to-face stuff. And when COVID happened, just like everyone, we were like, what are we going to do? So we started, again, like using the tools. Our institution had Constant Contact. We got permission to use that. So we sort of changed the letter format to doing it, through email. The benefit to this and what we've kept, we've stayed doing this now, even though we're back, is now we can do follow-up. So we do a lot of really strategic targeted communication. So we do sort of the introduction at the beginning of the semester saying like, hi, I'm Tess, I'm your partner librarian. Then, we know midterms are coming. We know kind of when the assignments are coming. Then we send out the targeted email with like the direct link to our LibGuide. We know they do a fairy tale assignment. We give them that research guide, right there. We're promoting some of our programming that way. We, spring break, we're like, here's our hours, right? So it's not every single student at the school, but it's 497 students right now. So that's like a lot. And then I'll talk about the other things. So again, we're still tracking the rosters for some of the professors and, making sure that the students get a little bit of extra credit. And it still feels meaningful. Like every once in a while, one of them will come in and be like, oh, I'm going to get extra credit if I meet with you. And they've like kind of already done their paper. But for the most part, it's still pretty meaningful. So the other big assignment that we have is this Western civilization assignment. And this has been like a sort of an amazing partnership. So one of our professors has a biography assignment that she does. And this is like before my time. I started working at SUNY Ulster in 2015, and this was like happening before I got there. So I don't even know how long it goes back. But she has them find a specialized encyclopedia, a peer-reviewed journal, and an academic biography. So they have to have those three sources. And she was doing this in her in-person classes. So back in the day, and we just sort of rebranded and said, we're the partner librarian, for history. But back in the day, there were these lines, right? They would come up to us with these paper forms and they had their citations and the citations were wrong and we're like hand correcting them and it's kind of a mess and it's really slow, and all of this. So again, that's what we were doing. It was a lot of times. So there were certain times in the semester we were just like, oh my God, like all we're doing is just like this sort of like long queue of, library questions, right? So once COVID hit, she yanked the assignment. So we were kind of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? She did something else. And then over the summer, we all sort of talked and we came back. And at the time, my colleague Marla, she was like, we need to do this online. And we talked to the professor and we were really uncomfortable with, she likes to give them points for this assignment. They would turn in the paper to her and she would give them extra points. But we didn't want to be in her grade book. Like that wasn't appropriate, right? If we moved it online. So we decided to try out the Google form. We're able to track, she gave it to all of her sections, so her fully online and her in person. And we're like able to track it by section. We give her the spreadsheet. The great thing about it now is the students, I mean, it's so much better for them because they have a written like trail of their corrections. They have the links to the sources, even if it's an in-person, we were able to like give them support and say like, here's a video saying how to check out the book. You need to place an interlibrary loan for this book. Like so it's all sort of trackable. And then we give it to the professor and she can see, that they have their three sources and that she has them do it by deadline and all this stuff and they get extra points. So this is something that was sort of born out of a terrible thing, COVID, that we're like, this is really working for us. And we still have this really meaningful partnership with them. It's sort of a scaffolding of information literacy skills because we have a 1-credit course that every student has to take at SUNY Ulster too. So it's like we're teaching them all of that in Library 111. And this is another way for them to like get back into different databases, use those searching skills, all of that stuff. And, really it's the professor's assignment, but it's sort of an example of having like a specific assignment with library stuff in it and then, bolstering that. So the other thing that was really great about it is it actually gave us then an opportunity for some assessment that, we all know and feel that students that use the library have more success, in their papers, their sources are better, all of that stuff, right? Well, we actually had a trackable, like we know they're getting extra points, so their grades are boosted, which is like a side thing, but we're able to see that all of these students, so, we went down, we analyzed the data for 3 academic years. So 76% of the students that are registered participate, so there are some that just don't do the form. They don't want the extra credit. I don't know what they do about their sources, like who knows? Or maybe they drop out or whatever. So We've also created embedded instruction in the course shell. So I've made like 3 different videos showing them where to go for these sources, suggestions for search techniques. So like, for example, if they're in JSTOR and they're looking for Cleopatra, there's going to be a lot of Shakespeare stuff in there, right? So like how to do a not search, how to do all these like very specific things, right? So after the embedded instruction, so that's already like the first layer of librarian intervention. 73% of those, out of that 76, they successfully identify all 3 sources. Now, some of them it takes longer. So 41% of them get all 3, the first. Maybe they would have, maybe not, but the videos help. 20% get it on their second submission, 5% on their third, and then, goes down. No one really, after the 5th, like there's not too many that get to the 5th, but then they just sort of, give up or they don't go any further. So that's been really great. I mean, the professor, we're sharing it with her, to just sort of have an opportunity to like sort of prove value in a way, and, to really talk about how much they're using libraries. So I think this semester, I think she's got like 5 sections going and we have about 92 students who are in this. So there's probably some overlap, but if you look at, we have like, maybe 10 to 15, all of our matriculated students have to take Library 111. Then they go on to the English classes. A majority of them, not every student takes Western Civ, but they have to take a History Gen Ed, and this is, one of the choices. So they're really, like I said, this scaffolding of trying to get them into our databases, trying to make them comfortable, to come back to us. I think we're sort of looking at the whole thing now. I think we want to get back to in-person for the English, at least to like make our faces out there. I do think there's an element of, I mean, probably everywhere, but definitely like in our community and at the community college of just kind of like making people feel safe to come and talk to us. I think we're going back to having like more strategic times to sit at the desk. Like we track our people in the building, we've got a lot of space usage. So it's like, when we look at that, it's like, maybe we need to be at the desk, like on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays between 9 and noon, and if we're going to catch people that way, that's when we would, get the most for it. So we're really trying to look at some of that. We may not go back into English, but we have a first year experience. And, we're talking about getting like some citation stuff or basic library skills. They're starting to redo that course and to have us try to advocate for a stronger librarian presence in that. And definitely going to like all the in-person FYE classes. So not talking about searching or anything, but definitely being like, hi, we don't bite, come see us. And, same thing, like we have a literacy lab. So that would be another place where we could really do some sort of strong, we have done some like, professional development type stuff with the tutors. So they really know what we have. There's a lot of confusion. I don't know if anyone else can relate between students that get confused about what the library can do for them and what the literacy lab can do for them. So to provide some sort of clarity, we like fooled around one time with us going over there. So we were there, but again, it's hard to know, like you could sit there and get nobody, or you can sit there and, really help them. So it's a little hard to predict when it's useful. And then the last thing that we're doing is we do have a program with incarcerated students who they get our associates with us, and then they go on and can get a bachelor's. And we got a grant from SUNY for like $9,000 to put books in there. We've been doing a lot of really like high-end, high-level like intervention with ILL stuff with certain professors of ours that teach in there. So like bringing in like 20 books that the psychology professor wants them to have for these assignments. So what we're really excited about is now, it was like $9,000. It's supposed to be DEI related, but with our curriculum. So we were selecting DEI materials like for our curriculum, and we're going to do like a big outreach to all the instructors who teach in there and show them what books we have, because the students in there have no internet access. So they can't do like active searching. They can place requests with us, and then I kind of decide what they're going to get, and maybe it's okay, but there's none of that sort of agency or like discoverability of like, oh, that fits, kind of a thing. So we're kind of guessing. So we're hoping that with this list and having like a really strong partnership with their librarian in the facility, that we can really provide the instructors with some resources to like, again, design assignments out of the materials that they have, so that there can be like some sort of stronger partnership and relationship that way. So that's it. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hi, I'm from Bard, and your comments about the reference test, that's something we also struggle with.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sitting there, where are you at? You said I have some feelings about that.
Yes.
Experience and why you didn't want to go back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, personally, right. So I think, it's been a journey. Like personally, I find it harder to work out there, right? So there's three of us, and one of our librarians is the director. The other person is the assistant director, and then me, like I'm the regular librarian. And they're, I mean, fantastic, but so one of our librarians is the president of the union. She and I are both co-chairs of a Middle States committee. Like all the stuff. I'm on the bylaws committee for the new staff assembly, right? So this is all great. Like they always want us to do this stuff. We produce a lot of great things. It's a little hard to get that stuff done when you're sitting out there, and it's a little frustrating when like a lot of the questions are, how do you print, and you feel like a student worker could be out there or something like that, right? So we're trying, but on the other hand, I also really, really think that, I just did like a whole workshop on trauma-informed like librarianship and stuff, and I just feel like a lot of people don't feel comfortable like knocking on my office door to come in and talk to me, right? It feels like you're bothering me. So trying to find that balance, right? And you won't know because you'll never know. It's not like you'll necessarily hear them say that or articulate that. And I definitely think at the community college level, you could, I mean, maybe it's, an assumption, right? But this is like, for a lot of people, this is like either they're coming back after a long time, or this is really their, first experience, right? In an institution of higher education. And, we really want to be there for them. So we're thinking about like maybe putting the student workers. So even if there's a body there, they can come up and ask. We're thinking about targeted times. We're thinking about, of course, we're all like, sort of limited by our actual physical space too, right? So we would love to get rid of the desk, so they could just come in. But we're also thinking about some signage, like, something catchy that's like, knock, the librarian's on duty, or something, like different things like that to kind of make it a little bit more. I'd be curious what you all are thinking.
We've scaled back over the last few years. We've generally scaled back our hours.
Mhm.
But it's that same tension, when you're first helping someone to print, they may come back and because they've had some interaction that was helpful, they may
Right.
come back and ask that reference question.
Mhm.
We have various ways that people can reach librarians. There's the chat, they can make appointments. So, and we do have a certain student out all the time.
Right.
So anyway, I was just, since you said it, and since it's a constant, we're like,
Yeah.
you may have a really busy shift where you're doing very in-depth reference, and you may just be sitting there for like 2 hours.
Right, right. I worry too about the optics of it. Like, it doesn't feel great. Like, we're definitely, our building's a pass through, and like, it doesn't feel good to me when like the president of the college walks by and like no one's at the desk. At the same time, I'm not like a, just out there like being like the greeting person. So, there's like a lot of like, back and forth mixed feelings. But does anyone else have any questions? Thank you.